love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkest night, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I'll give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I'll give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running, it keeps running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
Welcome to Bethany Covenant Church. I am Pastor Chris. So glad that you're with us. I am standing here at the first Bethany Covenant Church in Manchester, long before the live stream, actually long before the automobile. The people of Bethany met here to pray and to worship and to gather together as the church. And welcome to Bethany's second location. Before, this was an office building with title companies and doctors' offices. this is where the church met for worship and for gathering. And welcome back to Bedford, New Hampshire, to our current Bethany campus. We're just continuing the same mission that started over 100 years ago in Manchester, New Hampshire. And later today, over on the big field, we have the groundbreaking for our brand new pavilion. It's our first major building project in decades, and it's going to help us continue our mission of helping people follow Jesus. Welcome to Bethany Covenant Church, and welcome to Vision Sunday.
Good morning, church. It's good to gather again and worship as a church family. Wherever that is for you today, know that that space is sacred, and we are here to worship our God together this morning. Would you join us as we sing hymn number 422? For those that are in the room, 422, we're going to sing, "O God, our help in ages past." God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal hope. Under the shadow of your throne, your saints have dwelt secure. Sufficient is your arm alone, and our defense is sure. Before the hills in order stood, for earth received her frame. From everlasting you are God, to endless years the same. A thousand ages in your sight are like an evening gone. Short as the watch that ends the night before the rising sun. Time like an ever-rolling stream bears all of us away. We fly forgotten as a dream dies at the opening gate. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Be now our guide while life shall last, and our eternal home. I'm going to continue in song, that Christ might be magnified in our presence today. One, two. Were creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry? Then from north to south and east to west, were the whole earth echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea and sky, from rivers to the mountain tops. We hear Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart is made in cry, oh, and in one enraptured hymn of praise, we sing Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. I won't bow to idols, I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice, 'cause you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings, I'll hold fast to what is true. If the cross brings transformation, then I'll be crucified with you. 'Cause death is just a doorway into resurrection life. If I join you in your sufferings, then I'll join you when you rise. And in you return in glory with all the angels and the saints. My heart will still be singing, oh, my song will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified. Yeah, can we sing it one more time? Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Would you pray with me? This morning we come to worship you, to magnify you, to declare that you are God. And we look all around us and we see evidence of your goodness in our families, in parents and children and loved ones. We look around and we see evidence of your goodness in creation as you care for us through rain and sun, through growth. And as we move into the fall, God, we're mindful that you are the God that's with us in every season. No matter where life takes us, you are present and you are with us and you are good. And so we rejoice this morning in your presence. We rejoice as your people gathered near and far. And we thank you for the opportunity that it is to worship, the sacred spaces that are our homes or our porches or the sanctuary or the tent, wherever we gather today. We thank you for the sacredness of the moment and how you meet your people in these places. We thank you for today and the chance to worship. And we share together once again the prayer you taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Good morning. I'm J.T. Shoup, and it's my pleasure to greet those that are watching online and those that are in our church building this morning. Welcome. And if it's your very first time joining us via live stream or attending Bethany Covenant Church, we'd love to connect with you. And a way to do that is you can let us know that you're new through our website or our app, and we'll follow up with you this week. And I'm excited to let you know how you can partner to make a global impact this morning. We are taking a special offering for Covenant World Relief. This is our opportunity to help those that are fighting poverty, oppression, and help them get relief, as well as those that are rebuilding after earthquakes, floods, and other natural disasters. So we can give online. We can also give through our app, because this year we're going to be able to do more together at Bethany Covenant Church as we generously support World Relief and also the Covenant as a whole. When we come together to give, we can go places that we can't go on our own, and we can help support these local churches and ministries to be able to meet the needs of others. So may you give generously to Covenant World Relief, a one-time offering or ongoing gifts. And then I'm excited to also tell you about small groups. Small groups start now. We have small groups for men, small groups for women, for moms, for families, for singles, for all different people getting together where they want to go deeper in the Word, learn how to follow Jesus, and be able to put into action community to support and encourage one another. And many of the small groups are going to be studying the book of Joshua this fall. And I want to let you know that Sweet Tuesdays, our women's ministry, and the Sweet Tuesday small groups are going to kick off on the 22nd. They have a big Sweet Tuesday gathering, and then they're going to have small groups starting on the 29th. And you can contact Pinky Raines, for more information on that. And for men's ministry and men's groups that are starting this week and next, you can reach out to me or any of the other small groups. And then if you're new to Bethany Covenant Church, you found us during COVID, we'd like to invite you to a welcome lunch on Sunday the 28th. We're going to have it under the tent, and it's going to be a place to be safely gathered. And you can come and let us know who you are, and you can learn more about Bethany, our denomination, as well as meet some of the staff and leaders of the church. So we hope that you can join us. And if you enjoy what's going on at Bethany, whether you're following us on live stream, enjoying the tent service, or here in the building, share how the experience is impacting your life with all your friends. Like us online and share and invite them to be included. Thank you.
Well, good morning and welcome to Bethany Covenant Church. This is our 7th month of doing the live stream. I cannot believe that we've been doing it for this long, but we're going to keep going every Sunday morning. And so welcome you to join us every week that we are here doing this. And special welcome to those outside New Hampshire, to those watching in Connecticut and Illinois and Georgia and Massachusetts. We are glad that you are part of our church family, even though there's some physical distance between New Hampshire and those places. Glad that you are with us this morning. It is now time to receive our morning offering. All the information for how to give is coming up on your screen right now, and so I invite you to take this time, kind of center your heart and focus on what you would give to the ministry of Jesus Christ here at Bethany this week. This week was one of our busiest weeks with people returning to the Bethany campus. We had a big middle school event on Wednesday night, all masked and socially distanced, but we did ministry to our junior high students and to their families on Wednesday. And then yesterday we had a big goodbye party for Lois Palmquist. She is moving away to Grand Rapids and has been doing ministry here faithfully for decades. She was the one who helped find this property and build this building in ministry, and so she's going to be very missed in our church community. So know that during this season, ministry in the Bethany family continues to happen, and every week we are focused on helping people follow Jesus in this moment. Well, just by a show of hands, I want to say, how many of you remember the sermon I gave on the first Sunday of the year in 2020? That you remember the points, you remember the stories. Okay, I see hands going up around. That's good. Very, very good. Oh, Diane, I know that you were there and you don't remember? Oh, I can't believe that. And Jacob, come on, man. You were at church that day and you're not remembering? Okay, I see a lot of Bedford hands up. Okay, a lot of Manchester hands up. Come on, Goffstown people. I know you can do better. If I keep acting like I can see you, does that get creepier as I go? I think it might. And so it's so this week I did a Google search, and there are certain Google searches that we should not do, and many Google searches that pastors should not do. And I sat down to do this Google search, and I said, Chris, you really shouldn't do this search. This is not a safe search to be doing. And so I sat at my keyboard. I said, do you really want to do this search? So I typed in, do people remember sermons? And I hit return. And what came up on the screen was very disturbing. It's not an ego booster to type that into Google and to see what comes up on the screen next, because it really said that people don't necessarily remember sermons after time. And I'll say why that is in a minute. But at least other professions, you remember what they do. Somebody performs knee surgery on you, you remember that very, very clearly. Somebody invests money for you, you remember that very, very clearly. Different per pastors. We can give sermons and they're not remembered. But here's the goal of a sermon. The goal of the sermon to be effective doesn't mean that it needs to be remembered. It means that at some point there needs to be a conversation that happens between you and Jesus in that moment. And sometimes what happens in that moment is a big step, and sometimes it's a small step. So in the first message of 2020, I had a goal, and I preached on one of my favorite scriptures. And in this scripture, just to set it up, the people of Israel are waiting for the temple to be rebuilt. They're frustrated because it's taken a long time. And Zechariah the prophet has a vision. He has a vision of the priest Zerubbabel. And Zerubbabel approaches where this pile of rubble is that the old temple used to be. And it says in the text that what you are, mighty mountains, before Zerubbabel, you will become level ground. So Zechariah talks about the excavating process to kind of clear away all the old debris and all the old junk. You had to excavate that. Then Zerubbabel would take the first stone and carry it over to the excavated smooth land and place it down. And you say, well, one new stone of a whole temple, that's not that impressive. I think God recognized that as human beings, we tend to not be impressed with small things like that. And so in the scripture, God says, who dares despise the day of small things? Who dares despise the day of small things? That was the verse I preached on the first day of 2020. And I do see the irony of preaching about the importance of taking small steps 2 months before all of us would go through massive change and massive disruption. It doesn't seem like a very prophetic word anymore, does it? A far better message in January would have been, here's how to get ready for massive change and a huge disruptive moment to your life, not appreciate the small things. Do not despise about the small things you learn in school. And the kids are like, Pastor Chris, we're not even going to school anymore. Or when you're at the grocery store, do not despise just the small things that you pick up at the grocery store. People are like, we can't even get things at the grocery store anymore. Or when you come to church, do not despise the small work that God can do while sitting in church. People are like, we don't even come to church anymore because of this moment. And so I spent a whole sermon preparing you to celebrate the small beginnings of God and failed to address the more significant topic, what happens when massive changes and disruptions take place. It's just a good thing that nobody remembers sermons. So now we can address this. Oftentimes we're not prepared for them. And so I want to talk about not how to prepare for them, but when they come, this is how we can live. And so you look through the scriptures and you start to see all these people that went through these disruptive moments. You know, Moses was not prepared for the burning bush on the day that he walked up to it. He had never been through that before. That was not something that was just like old ground, something brand new. God was moving him into a new day. Joseph had never been sold into slavery before. He had never led a country before. He had no reference for that. That was disruptive change that now found his life, and he had to find a way to live through it. Nehemiah had never rebuilt a city before. David had never killed a giant before. It's not like he had this long list of giants that he had killed before, where he said, oh, I'm used to this. This is what I know in life. No, it was new. Every time they had to step on new ground and go to a new place that they had never been before. Even Jesus, on the night before Good Friday, he prays in the garden, God, take this cup from me. Jesus, walking into Good Friday, had never experienced Good Friday before. That was untrodden ground for him, unwalked ground for him. Even Jesus experienced new disruptive moments that he had never experienced before. And so teaching, do not despise the day of small things, is good when life feels more predictable and more certain, but not as much when you're going through the kind of disruptive change that we've been through. There were moments this year that I was not prepared for. I was not prepared to move all of our services online. There was no class in seminary for that, no training for that in ministry. That class did not exist. It was one of those big moments that found us, and we had to come face to face with that moment. This summer, my dad caught this virus, and it threw his body into chaos. I was not spiritually or emotionally prepared for that kind of disruption or that kind of change. Even with as many sick people and dying people that I've sat with in hospitals before, you are never prepared for it to be your own dad. And right now we're seeing throughout our culture that those who are leaders in business and families and school systems and those who are principals and those who are teachers, you are living in this moment where you're just kind of making things up as you go along, adapting to this change, trying to make kind of old things fit into this new moment in history. You know, at least with the small things, we feel like we're in control, that we can handle the small moments, the small lessons. We can not sweat the small stuff. It's when the big moments come, and we eventually need to stand in that place where the next step that we take is a step into the unknown, that things get a lot more scary and a lot more tricky. And so one of the exciting things, though, of following Jesus, and one of the scariest parts, is that Jesus is always inviting us not to just tread over the same ground, but to break new ground, to step out of faith. We step out in faith with Jesus and walk new ground and break new ground and find new places to serve. And so before I read from Deuteronomy 30, I want to set up the text, and this will be our text for the morning. And the text goes back to when God rescued the Israelites from Egypt. God made a covenant with the people. A covenant is kind of like not more than a promise. It's more like a marriage ceremony. That in a marriage ceremony, each side says, I'm going to commit my life to you. I'm going to commit my life to you. And that's what God and the people of Israel do. God commits himself to caring for the people of Israel. The people of Israel commit themselves to living for God in the world. And the big difference here, bigger than a marriage, is that God is like so much greater than the people of Israel. So God actually takes more responsibility in the covenant upon himself. And so in Deuteronomy 29, Moses is standing up to preach his last sermon, his last message to the people before he's going to pass away. This is a big moment. And it was right after the covenant was created with the people, not even 40 days in, that the people had broken the covenant. And now Moses stands before him this day, and he says, I'm going to offer you now a chance to renew the covenant that was broken. I'm going to offer you a chance to tread new ground again. I'm going to offer you the chance to begin again with who God is calling you to be. And this is what Moses says in this big decision moment. He says, now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. I love how he encourages them. It is not up in heaven, so you have to ask, who will ascend into heaven to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and your hearts so that you may obey it. Moses comes to them in this big decision moment. This big moment of decision, this big moment of uncertainty. And he tells them, you have all that you need right now to make this decision. You don't need to go on a quest to the heavens. You don't need to go find, Thor's big hammer or go to the bottom of the sea and discover some amulet. You don't need to go on some big quest to discover some ancient artifact. In this moment, Israel, you have what you need. You have what you need to make this decision right now. That's the first thing that I want to say about a disruptive moment. Is in a disruptive moment, you may not have everything you need at that beginning time to complete the journey, but God will give you what you need to start it. And you look at any big moment, whether it's the passing of a loved one or what we just celebrated with 9/11 or what we're going through with the virus, that we may not have everything that we need to complete a journey, but we have everything from God in that moment to start where we are on that journey. God does not call us to a life that is impossible or undoable. He says to the Israelites, you have enough right now to start this journey. What you need to finish, that'll come when you need those things. Moses is telling them you have everything that you need right now. You are missing nothing. In this big decision moment, you have what you need. Now, you may not have what you need 10 years from now, but you have what you need right now. Our church couldn't have been more unprepared for a pandemic. We did not have rooms full of equipment sitting aside, ready to be brought out when we needed to set up lights and cameras. The first Sunday, we were using lamps with light bulbs in them to kind of get enough light so that it would show up good on the camera. We didn't have any equipment. We had 2 cameras, and so we had 1 camera, and so we started with what we had. And we said, here's what we have for week 1, so let's use it. Here's what we have for week 2, so let's use it. We didn't have week 15 equipment in week 1, a little bit like Zerubbabel. At the time he laid that first stone, he didn't have a whole bunch of other stones behind him. He didn't have to wait for all those stones to show up. He just needed to take the one that he did have and place it on the ground and said, here's the first stone, and we're going to start building on this. We can't be afraid to take a first step, because we don't know what the 100th step is going to look like. We still always have to take the first step, even if the 100th step is uncertain. You may not have everything you need to complete the journey, but God gives you what you need to start it. And disruptive moments, they cause us to ask, can I get through this? Chances are, at any big moment, 9/11, death of a loved one, this pandemic, we've asked the question, can I get through this? Can I get my family through this? You don't need to get through it all at once. You only need to get through the moment that you're in and allow God then to handle the next moment and the next moment. Second thing, when big disruptive moments happen, is that we need to keep looking towards the future. And so we went to a place of our past as a church this week, and we did a little bit of filming, and so we want to show you where we went earlier this week. We are at the corner of Pine and Orange, where this is the first church that Bethany met in, starting back in 1889. And they went through some huge, significant moments in the early part of ministry. You can imagine they went through World War I together, and then the Spanish flu together, and then the Great Depression, and then World War II. Big moments. And through each big moment, they needed to continue to see that they had a future. At one point, they needed to decide whether to move from this building and seek a new location. And at that moment, they said, we have a future beyond this place. They're building a clock in Texas. The clock is being built inside this mountain, and they're calling it a 10,000-year clock. It ticks every year, and then the hand moves every 100 years. This is not a fast-moving clock. And the designer is hoping that by building this clock, that he's reminding people to create things that'll outlast their lives. That's what the people of this church did, is that they created a church that was going to outlast their lives. In the midst of their difficult moments and tough moments, they saw a future in Jesus, a future of the church that would outlast their present life. So we had a lot of fun filming there this week. That's the first church that Bethany met in. With God, there's always a future. And we've kind of noticed that through this particular moment or other difficult moments, is that we always have in mind a place in the future that we want to get to and to work towards and to strive for. And right now, our future maybe, gosh, we're just waiting to get till 2021. Other disruptive moments, the further you need to look into the future, the further you need to see that God has a better future for us. This summer, at my dad's service, I did the service for my dad, and we looked a little bit towards the past and a little bit towards the future. You know, as you grow up, you learn a lot about what your parents were like before you were born, you know, when they were having fun, and then you came. And before I was born, when I was born, my dad had gray hair already, anticipating my growing up years. But before I was born, my dad had this like jet black hair. And he had won like this little scooter motorcycle in an art contest that he had entered. And he lived in Boston as an artist and commuted out to do youth pastor work. And I said at his service, I said, I really feel like I missed my dad's coolest years. You know, we never got to see the dad who lived in Boston and was this hip, cool artist with this jet black hair. I said, he sounds so edgy, doesn't he? Because that was not a word I would have used to describe my dad. And so I said at my service, I said to my mom, I said, I can't believe that your parents let you date my dad, the artist from Boston with the jet black hair and the motorcycle. And because when I was growing up, all that got traded in. He traded in that scooter motorcycle for a huge 15-passenger van that I learned to drive in, which was the complete opposite of cool at that particular time. He traded in living in Boston for a suburban school system and going to school on school functions for me when I was a student with clogs on his feet and paper hats that he had made. And I said that I feel like I had missed out on like the cool side of Dad. And I made my girls a promise that day. I said to them, I make a promise to you guys today that my plan is to be more cool and more edgy the older that I get. And I said to my Ashlyn and Elaine, I said, that's why this week I'm buying a motorcycle and dyeing my hair black. And so they were not impressed with that. And I came to the end of the message after talking about my dad's artistic side, the side that he was able to kind of see things and create things, and how some of the Parkinson's that he had taken away his ability to work with his hands and to work with his mind. And I talked about the resurrection body that my dad's going to get because of Jesus Christ. And it'd be no more depression, and no more anxiety, and no more Parkinson's disease, and no more seizures, and no more COVID-19 interrupting or getting in the way of the intricate and special neurological wiring that God gifted my dad with. His mind worked in an amazing way, but there are so many things that stole that from him at the end of his life. And I went on to say, I know he's working on something right now. I just don't know what it is. And then I talked about way, way in the future. And I said, I look forward to getting to know my dad when sin will no longer get in the way of who God made my dad to be and who God made me to be. It was good here, but it will be perfect then. That sometimes all that we have to cling to is our future with God and our future resurrection with God. When we forget to look to the future, or forget to build for the future, we can be swallowed up by the present. We are not just invited to endure the present, we are invited to create a better future out of a challenging moment. That's what we do in disruptive moments. We create a better future out of a challenging moment. And so in disruptive moments, you have what you need right now. In disruptive moments, you have to remember that there is a better future. And the third thing about disruptive moments is this. In disruptive moments, we must adapt, but still always fulfill our sacred center. And we took you to another location to talk about this week. We are here at Bethany's second location. In 1985, I was 11 years old. That was a big fall for me. I had saved all my money, and in 1985, I went to the toy store and I bought my very first Nintendo. That was the year that Nintendo came out. Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Duck Hunt. If you grew up in the 80s, this was a big moment for you, the moment that Nintendo came out. I didn't realize that Nintendo started as a company back in 1889, the same year that Bethany started. They weren't making video game systems. They were making individual playing cards. The man who founded the company would draw each card individually and then would sell them. How do you adapt from drawing individual playing cards to becoming the biggest video game seller around the world? No offense to those who are PlayStation and Xbox people. You adapt without losing a sense of what you're trying to do as a company. People sometimes ask me, what's the greatest tradition of the church? The church has a lot of great traditions. It's tradition of music, it's tradition of architecture, it's tradition of helping the poor and serving those, but maybe the greatest tradition of the church, the great tradition of the church is bringing the message of Jesus to any nation, any community, any person, and sharing it with them. I love that story of Nintendo that they started in 1889. And when we look at this moment for us as a church, the phrase that guided us through this to make sure that we weren't getting away from our North Star, from our sacred center, from our core vision, is we use the phrase, the very simple phrase, helping people follow Jesus in this moment. We added the "in this moment" at the end. And helping, when we first looked at this word, it wasn't a word that I liked very much. Helping isn't as exciting as a word as passion or dream or vision. Helping is actually, it's a very simple word, but here's why I ended up liking helping. because wherever somebody is, you can help them. That if somebody's at the very beginning and have never heard of Jesus Christ, we can help them. If somebody is struggling in their life with Jesus Christ, we can offer help. If someone is in a place where all of a sudden their life with Jesus is just struggling and hurting so much, we can help them. And so we use that term help because it allows us to include everybody in that phrase. Everybody at some point is going to need some help. And so the question that I talked about last year in Vision Sunday is, when we come to somebody, we can say, what would be most helpful for this person? Do they just need an encouragement today? Do they need maybe something a little bit more? Do they need a gift today? Do they need a word of scripture for me to offer? Do they just need my prayers today? Do they just need me to sit and be silent with them as they process something? There's always something that we can do to help. People's an easy one. God said in the number one commandment, He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love others as yourself. Whether it's friends or enemies, people you like or people you don't like, we are helping all people follow Jesus. The word follow, we all follow. Vulnerabilities. If you were already anxious before this moment, chances are it's made you more anxious. If there was a strain in a relationship before this, it escalated during this moment. If you had a hard time maintaining unity before a disruption, that disunity was before. If you were selfish before a disruptive moment, that probably doesn't get any better when the moment continues or when the moment happens. The Israelites were faced with their vulnerability, and now they had to be honest and use it as a catalyst towards a different life, or to do nothing and just stay the same. The good news is that God loves to come beside us in our weaknesses. God loves to come beside us in our vulnerabilities. You know, most often our vulnerabilities are not solved by a big miracle. They are solved by some combination of God giving us hope and other people walking alongside us and insights from our own life, maybe from time to time an epiphany. And for me, I've pastored through some disruptive moments, and it always exposed my vulnerabilities. The disruptive moments would come, and my vulnerability